Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I am back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we are going to be making a card with the hooves and horns, lovely layers, and these are the Highland cows. In this video we're going to concentrate on doing the bushy one, and then I'm also using the, I think it's Howdy stamps and dies for the sentiment. And the background is the farmhouse fields, which is not new, but does work extremely well with this release. So I'm going to be doing all of mine with coloring today. I'm going to be using my Copic coloring to kind of bring these guys to life. But you can use whatever you would like. You can use ink blending. You can use watercolors, colored pencils, or just colored cardstock. So we're just going to talk about a couple of different ways that you can use your dies, specifically the honeybee dies, because they do have embossed detail to kind of guide where your shading can go. So first things first, I cut all of mine out of white. My preferred white cardstock is Neenah 80-pound solar white cardstock. The 80-pound helps the alcohol markers to kind of blend in the fibers of the paper. If your paper is too thin, there's not enough to hold the alcohol ink for them to blend well, and if it's too thick, sometimes it can't really permeate to blend well. So I find the 80 works really well for me. And then I kind of lay everything out. Here what I'm doing is, because I cut both at the same time, the female and the male, I am just sorting all of my parts. This helps me, which you obviously can do it however works for you, but it helps me to kind of break down what I need to color what. So even after I break down all the pieces, you'll see the parts that I'm coloring like brown versus the parts that I am coloring dark brown or black, like the hooves. Like I kind of categorize them so that they stay together. Then with the lovely layers, you can do this with any layering die sets. You can just lay them on top of each other. So if you are not sure how to put it together, and even when I am sure, I'm going to be honest, I pull up the Lovely Layers layering guide, which is always available on the Honeybee website. You just look for the one that you're, looking for, whatever that is, the flowers, the animals, and on there it will say download the layering guide, and it'll open up in a PDF. And then I just leave this on my computer screen while I'm putting mine together. So I am just laying all of them out, and then I'm using my lightest color to kind of trace around so that I can see where I want to put my shadows. Once I have all of those marked out on the body, then I'm going to move on to the head. I recently learned when I did the video for the Lovely Layers horse that the bangs, the horse bangs, are called a forelock. I don't know if that's what they're called on cows or not. If they are not, please correct me in the comments because I would love to know. And then, so each layer, the bang, like the head onto the piece with the horns, the bangs onto the face, the snout onto the face, all of those things, I'll just mark them off. So that way I know where to put the shadows. Now, sometimes it's not an exact science, so I always kind of double check as I'm going. I am starting with my darkest color because I've mapped all of my shadows with that lightest color first. But if this is too scary for you, which I completely understand, you could start with your lightest color, work out to your darkest, and then from your darkest back into your lightest. The other thing to note is I am using the E50s family, so I marked them in E53, but I think the lightest color I ended up using was E55, 57, and then 59. 59 is the darkest one in that family, but I knew that the legs here and the tail, because it's going to be set behind my cow, I wanted to make sure that those were going to be darker. So what I did was I brought in an E49. This is one of the, if not the darkest brown in the Copic collection. So I like to bring in this one, or the E29 is pretty dark as well. It's a lot warmer. But then that is my base for my shadows. And then when I bring in my what would normally be my darkest color, like my E59, and I go over top of it, I can tint it to be a bit warmer by glazing that color over top, but it's still going to give me some darker shadows. Alternatively, if you don't have a super dark brown to do this with, you can use a gray. Now, you would want to use a cool gray for cooler colors, your blues, greens, purples, those types of colors, and a warm gray for your warmer colors, red, orange, yellow. Same thing would apply to your brown. So I'm using a warmer brown here. The E50s family is pretty warm. So if I didn't have that E49, I would use a W9, a warm gray in the same kind of family there, or same hue saturation as the other color I'm using, which is that 9. So as far as where the shading goes, obviously the head is going to stick out farther than the rest of the body. So there's going to be shadows there onto its chest. The legs, where the legs are kind of coming like and meeting the belly, there's going to be shadows there. The tail where it's tucked behind the legs, we obviously already did those shadows. You could leave the full back lighter, depending upon where, kind of your light source was. I wanted to have a little bit more darker color, so I didn't do as much, but you definitely could. The other thing, for blend, like really good blending, you want to make sure that your colors are, like your markers are full. So if they are, if you're going through and adding down your color and it looks like they're streaking, refill them so that way you get a really nice blend. For the actual, this part is just the horns. I am going to use those warm grays that we were talking about. So I'm going to add a little shadow kind of underneath them. The reason that you see me also doing it on the head as well as that kind of like brown that I went around the edges with, is to make sure that we don't have any white peeking out. If you are putting your layers together and you notice any white showing, it kind of ruins the illusion of a three-dimensional object if we can see those kind of white parts. So I just try to make sure that I, get them while I'm doing my coloring. So I do want to say, because I'm sure that you noticed at the beginning of this video, there were 2 cards. I'm just showing you this cow, which is, I believe, the male. And the reason that I'm doing that is because they are kind of longer videos, because I made 2 cards and all of it is Copic coloring. So I decided to split them up into 2. So the other one will actually be on the Honeybee channel tomorrow as part of the YouTube hop for the Sawdust and Saddles release. So that way you guys will get to see both of them and we won't have to have like a extremely long video, and I won't have to cut out a bunch of stuff because it's too long. So now that we have the majority of our cow colored, I am going to start working on these other little bitty layers. This is the snout. And so while I normally wouldn't do much to this because it's the part that sticks out the furthest, I did add just a little bit of darkness with the nostrils, just a little bit of a medium brown in there. And then for the hooves, I did the 2 darkest browns. So that's that E49 and the E59. I am just going ahead and coloring them on the actual cow again to make sure that white part isn't peeking through. I added my darkest color to the bottom of the hooves and then blended that out with the mid-tone. I had a much easier time with these. For some reason, when I was doing the horse ones, like my brain would not compute that the straight side of it was not on the bottom. It was on the side. Because just the way the horse is drawn, which I do have a fun idea for that horse. So I'll have that video coming up too, for a scene. You guys know I love to make a scene card. And then here I'm just gluing these down flat. You could add, multiple layers of foam and different levels of dimension. I like to keep my cards on the flatter side if I can. So when I'm using the lovely layers, because there's so many layers of cardstock on top of each other, I typically don't add a lot of foam unless for some reason the design really calls me to do that. Here you're going to watch me glue his snout on upside down and then fix it. Like here, look at his snout upside down. Oh, let me get that. Yep, I noticed right away, but he looked pretty silly there for a second. And then from there, these pieces, I could see if you weren't looking at the layering guide, like how they might be a little bit tricky, but there's actually kind of like little notches you can look for. So here, this leg, that V that's cut in it is, so you can match it up to that like fur that's hanging down off his chest. Same thing for this back leg. The way that it's drawn, it kind of fits right into that little nook so that they both look behind. For the tail, the bottom piece, the kind of like the bottom furry piece on the actual body, the tail tucks right up underneath that. So that little piece that's sticking out goes right over the tail for them to come together really seamlessly. Oh, see there, I missed a piece. I had to go in because it was white. So then we're going to put the hooves together onto our little cow, and then the eyeballs. Now, there are obviously eyes when you do the die cutting. I believe they're actually on the same die as the hooves. But you could also, which I've done in the past, and I think is adorable, you could use the like the little black pearls from any of our pearl embellishment sets as eyes, and those are super fun as well. And for these, the coloring, I just did the same, that E49 dark brown for the eyeballs. So we're having the weirdest weather day. So I'm not going to be a complainer because I live in Ohio and, it's not always good weather here. And we've had really, really nice weather. Like it's been hot, but like we've been able to be in the pool with the kids and, taking the dogs for walks in the evening, and it's been really nice. Today, I have been caught in a downpour like 3 times. 3 times. Oh, this is the actual technique. Let's talk about this. So here, because the lovely layers is done so well, and part of the reason that is because they do embossing when you're doing your die cutting. And so the Highland cows are very furry, and maybe you're a person who's like, I don't know how to make it look furry. Follow the guidelines that are given to you with the embossing. So I chose the medium color I used, which was an E57, and I'm just going in and I'm adding a little bit of color, very light-handed, almost no pressure, doing little flicks right along the areas that the embossing has pressed to the paper. And it really helps him to look so much furrier. There's also another little trick that you can use that we'll see a little bit later. If you find that your mid-tone is a little bit too strong of a color, you can always go back over with your lighter mid-tone, and that will help blend it and still leave you with a lot of dimension. This is that Farmhouse Fields. I have a full sheet of paper here because it is a little bit bigger, but it's bigger and it is actually very helpful for us because it is bigger than an A2 size. So I ran that through. Across the top there, it does not cut out the tree. So I'm going to put this in and I'm going to take it to 5.5 and then I'm going to trim it out. That sky piece will come out. You could use that and fit it together like a puzzle, or you can do what I'm going to do, which is create a separate piece behind it. In order to create that separate piece behind it, I am just going to do some nice light sky colors. My go-to is Salvage Patina and Salty Ocean. I use my larger honeybee background brushes for this, and I leave some white, and it just gives this, kind of illusion of like soft, fluffy clouds in the background, nothing too definitive. And you could even go darker with the blue sky if you wanted it to be more apparent. You could go in with some prize ribbon or Mermaid Lagoon if you were, more along like the blue-green side. For the farmhouse fields, there are stencils. I will link them below, even though I didn't use them, but you can absolutely use the stencils to lay down your base color. I believe I've used them in the past. I'll have to try to link to that video that I've done. But so basically what I'm doing here is I'm just adding some shading kind of to the left and the right hand side and along the bottom. Here you can see exactly, remember what I told you, like make sure your markers are filled. Can you see how streaky my grass looks? And it's because I'm not taking the time to step and refill them. So it's looking very, very streaky. I did eventually step and refill them. But so here, I left, kind of like a little bit of a lighter center because that's where our cow is going to go. So it's kind of going to draw the eye. But then here, this is again, the way that we colored the cow and, made him look like he was furry. I'm following that same principle here because the grass is embossed into this die cut. And so I'm going in with my different colors of green. I'm going in, with the darker around the edges and then the mid-tone and then the lightest color. And I'm just kind of following along with the embossed areas that are already down. And this is going to help create a fuller grass look. Like, maybe he's out there in the meadows, grazing along, kind of thing. This also helps to mask any streakiness in your coloring. Pro tip on how to fix your boo-boos when you didn't take the time to fix them. So I'm just going to do that all the way through to my lightest color. And then for the other ones, I'm going to just choose a couple of different greens because I want them to work together, but I want them to not all be very one note. So I went with a yellow green that's a little bit more desaturated for this first hill. Now all of these areas they're die cut separated. So if you need to color them, you can do what I'm doing here and just pull them apart. And the reason that they are is so that you can put other things in there. They, with the houses and the barns and all of those things so that you can kind of tuck them behind. Here, this is kind of like rows in this field back here. And I decided to do that in the same green colors that I did the front grass in, minus the lightest color, which is a yellow green. So this looks more like a true green. And then I went really, really yellow green with the actual tree line. I'm not going to color the tree here because I'm not going to use it. Not for this one. Not for this one. The other way, if you find that you have a hard time keeping them separate to color them, you can just slide a scrap piece of paper in between them, and that will help from getting one green onto the other. So anywho, I was telling you guys, I had a doctor's appointment today. I went to my doctor's appointment, and when I was leaving the hospital, it was a total downpour, and of course I'm parked like all the way in the back lot. I'm like, oh man, you got to be kidding me. So I did at least have the presence of mind to grab a sweater, mostly because I thought I was going to be cold. So at least it had like a little zip up hoodie sweatshirt. So I had that over my head. So I guess that counted for something. And then when I went to my dad's to pick up Peanut, it was raining there as well. Not as hard, thank God. But then when I picked up Caitlin from daycare, it was an absolute torrential downpour. And then I have to put her in her car seat, right? So I'm just standing out there in it, just getting hammered. So while I'm doing this voiceover, I am still drying out. So thankfully, it seems like this is only supposed to be the only rainy day as we head into the holiday. So that makes me happy. So there you saw, I glued on the parts that are the scenery, and then I trimmed off the tree. So I really love that you can get like a couple of different looks out of this particular one. And then I just laid my cow there so that I could get my sentiment. So there is one that I used here that's like the, howdy partner, kind of, with an accent. But if you are a stickler for spelling, there is one in this set that actually spells partner correctly, if you would prefer that one. So other than that, all I really did was glue them down. That I'm going to show you just that one more other little kind of furry technique that you can use to help them look a little bit more dimensional when you're coloring, like your animals. So he, like I said, he just went down flat. And then the thing that I'm going to bring in here is my white gel pen. Of course, I added some white highlights to like the horns and his eyes, but I'm also going to use it to do some of his hair. And again, it's the same thing, kind of like just those short flicks. Now, if you want a lot of contrast, you could just leave them, maybe you have a black cat with like what you want the whiskers to show. You use the white gel pen. But this, I just wanted him to look a little bit more dimensional and like some of his hair was catching the light. However, if it is too much, like I wanted mine to be lighter but not stark white. Once it dries, I go back in with my lightest color and just kind of flick over top of that, and it won't get rid of it, but it will tone it back. So here is both of the cards. Like I said, please join us for the YouTube hop tomorrow, and that's where we'll be doing the other card on the Honeybee channel. Thank you guys so much for your time. I always appreciate it, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.